In its 2026 Fiscal Transparency Report, the United States Department of State delivered two very different outcomes for two neighboring economic powerhouses in East Africa. Kenya met the minimum requirements. Tanzania did not. To a casual observer, the headline looks like a straightforward pass or fail mark from Washington. But this wasn't a GDP ranking, it wasn't a corruption index, and it certainly wasn't Washington choosing a favorite strategic partner in East Africa. So why did the exact same assessment framework produce two radically different outcomes for the region's rivals? And what does this technical evaluation reveal about the multi-billion-dollar race for East Africa's future? To understand what happened, you have to look at what Washington actually measures during these reviews. The State Department conducts fiscal transparency reviews of governments covered by the program to evaluate public financial management, budget accessibility, and fiscal accountability. According to the official report methodology, meeting the threshold requires a government to make its key budget documents publicly available online within a reasonable time frame. That includes the enacted national budget as well as end-of-year financial execution reports showing where public funds actually went. Beyond basic budget publishing, the assessment evaluates three specific areas: sovereign debt, natural resource contracting, and supreme audit institutions. The assessment also examines the public disclosure of sovereign debt obligations and other relevant fiscal information. Governments must maintain transparent, legally codified rules for contracting and licensing in natural resource sectors such as mining, oil, and gas. And finally, they must preserve the operational independence of national audit bodies and publish their findings. In this assessment, Washington found that Kenya met these baseline disclosure standards. Tanzania, meanwhile, was flagged for failing to meet those minimum reporting and public accounting thresholds, specifically regarding timely budget publication and complete debt disclosures. This finding comes at a pivotal moment for Tanzania. Under its current national growth strategy, Dodoma is executing some of the largest infrastructure and energy projects on the African continent. The country is expanding the port of Dar es Salaam, constructing an electrified standard-gauge railway stretching toward Burundi and Rwanda, and negotiating multi-billion-dollar international agreements for offshore liquefied natural gas and critical minerals like nickel, graphite, and rare earths. These ambitious megaprojects require massive international capital, and while missing a U.S. transparency benchmark does not automatically halt foreign investment or trigger financial sanctions, it introduces distinct risk considerations for prospective lenders and institutional investors. When sovereign debt details, state guarantees, or resource licensing terms lack complete public disclosure, that opacity can become an additional information risk for lenders and investors evaluating long-term projects, potentially complicating financing negotiations just when a country needs cheap, patient capital. Then there is Kenya. On paper, Nairobi's result looks like a clean victory. But the reality inside Kenya's economy is far more complex than a passing grade suggests. Kenya met Washington's fiscal transparency standard while managing immense fiscal pressure, high public debt servicing obligations, and strict ongoing structural adjustment programs with the IMF. Because transparency is not solvency. Meeting U.S. fiscal transparency standards does not mean Kenya's national debt is low, nor does it mean its budget is balanced. It simply means the ledger is open. Washington, international rating agencies, and global lenders can see where public funds are being allocated, how sovereign debt obligations are structured, and how national accounts are audited by independent oversight bodies. For Nairobi, that transparency can strengthen institutional credibility with foreign capital markets and international financial institutions, even while navigating a very tight domestic fiscal reality. This brings us back to the central truth of the entire State Department report. Meeting a disclosure threshold is not a broader political endorsement or a clean bill of economic health. A country can maintain completely transparent public accounts and still face severe domestic economic headwinds, high inflation, and heavy debt service burdens. Conversely, a rapidly expanding economy with vast natural wealth, rapid GDP growth, and massive industrial potential can fail to meet the standard simply because its public reporting frameworks remain delayed, closed, or incomplete. Washington was not declaring Kenya's economy fundamentally superior to Tanzania's. It was highlighting a structural difference in how both governments handle public financial disclosure. When you zoom out from the technical audit criteria, this report becomes one piece of a much larger regional chess match. East Africa's two largest economic hubs are locked in an intense competition to build the primary transit corridors serving landlocked markets across Central and East Africa. Kenya operates the Northern Corridor, anchored by the deep-water port of Mombasa and highway networks connecting to Uganda, Rwanda, South Sudan, and the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Tanzania operates the Central Corridor, anchored by the port of Dar es Salaam and rail links extending into Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, Zambia, and the mineral-rich southern regions of the DRC. Both nations are competing to serve as the gateway to the same landlocked economies, carrying critical minerals out to global markets and bringing manufactured goods and industrial inputs in. In this regional infrastructure race, capital is the ultimate fuel. Expanding deep-water ports, laying heavy freight rail, and building energy grids requires continuous infusions of international equity and debt. And as global investors evaluate where to commit long-term infrastructure capital over the next decade, public financial disclosure becomes another strategic variable in the equation. A transparent financial framework can give lenders greater visibility into public finances, debt obligations, and the government's contractual commitments. An opaque framework, no matter how attractive the physical asset, can add another layer of information risk that investors may have to account for. Kenya has met Washington's fiscal transparency standard, while Tanzania is still dealing with disclosure gaps. Whether that difference translates into a meaningful financing advantage is a question for markets, not something the report itself decides. Tanzania is building ports, railways, energy projects, and mineral corridors on a massive physical scale, but its public financial reporting and debt disclosures still have room to catch up with its physical ambitions. And that may be the real lesson of this State Department report. East Africa's next economic leader won't be decided by concrete, steel, and deep-water berths alone. It will also be decided by who can convince the global financial system that the numbers behind that infrastructure can be trusted